Welcome to Rooted Revival, where truth takes root and generational change begins. I'm Michelle Lynch, functional health practitioner, founder of WellHaus, and mother of 7. Here we expose the lies, reclaim what matters, and build what lasts. For you, your family, and the legacy you're called to carry. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'm sitting down with Liz Fenn, the founder of Urban Farm Collection. And trust me, this is not your average skincare chat. Liz is a deep well of knowledge when it comes to tallow, animal fats, and why so much of what we've been told about skin health is completely backwards. We're talking about the real root of skin issues, the power of ancestral ingredients, the problem with conventional skincare today, and why reconnecting to the land and your biology might be the missing piece in your wellness journey. It's rich, it's surprising, and honestly, it'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about what belongs on your skin. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, hi. Okay, so today I am joined with Liz Fenn from Urban Farm Collection. Hey Liz, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm just so excited. I have really enjoyed talking with all of these brands, all of these farms, all of these amazing people across the US. And I'm just so excited to share. I feel like I know you a little bit more now after, researching and getting to know your products and your brand and you a little bit, but I'm excited for everybody else to get to know you. So what I've been doing with these podcasts is letting you guys share your story. I feel like that's a part of what makes you guys so unique. Everybody so unique is their story. So I want to kind of dive into, don't just start with how Urban Farm came to be, but I want to talk really about your history, growing up, who you became, who you are, who Liz is. So tell us a little bit about how you became who you are, and that'll help, unfold, what came to be with Urban Farm Collection.
Okay. So I grew up in a standard American household in the 90s and early 2000s. There's not a lot of information. We didn't have the internet at our fingertips to just be able to research things. And so literally in my household, we grew up eating what everyone else ate. I had Fruit Loops for breakfast. I had Cinnamon Toast Crunch for breakfast. We ate McDonald's and fast food all the time. And it was just the classic, a standard American diet, how we grew up. And so health was not really even on my radar. I did start to get chubby in my preteen years because, when you're on that kind of diet, it's just inevitable.
Yep.
And so that definitely kicked me to start thinking about getting skinny, not healthy, but getting skinny. And as a teenager, I did develop a bit of an eating disorder because I just thought, well, food makes me fat. And so stop eating food, just having no concept for it's the type of food, your body needs food. And so I ended up getting really skinny, and then I equated skinny with health. And so I would just severely limit my calories, and it was counting calories. It was not nutrients. It was just limit your calories, stay skinny. That's healthy. It wasn't, because I went on to have some health issues in my early adulthood because my mindset was just not understanding the impact of food. So fast forward, just typical teenage years, I was skinny. I would limit my food. I ended up losing my cycle for about 9 months because I got so skinny. I never had to get to a point where I had to go to a rehab or center or anything. But I remember one point as a teenager looking in the mirror and going, this isn't actually attractive. I'm too skinny. And it was just that I always wanted to be attractive. It was just that snapped out of me. It was I've got to start eating more. And so I started to learn a little bit more of a balance of I need to eat food, but it was still very much the standard American, what health looked like, try and avoid fats and stuff like that. So I stayed slim. I got my cycle back. I started eating more food and stuff, but stayed slim and would hit the gym, hit the tanning beds, hit all the different things that, millennials did back then. And then I went off to a missions organization called YWAM when I was about 19. I was kind of in a place of my life where I was I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was a manager at a grocery store, and I wasn't planning on going to college. I was kind of moving up in the grocery store, but I was also at a crucial point in my life. It was I don't want to be tethered down to a career at 19. And so I ended up just packing up and going to YWAM. I went as a missions organization, and I was in Denver, Colorado. And then we went on a missions trip for 2 months to Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And that was a really pivotal time in my life of like getting out. I was still living at home, like getting out of my parents' house. That's my dog. Getting out of my parents'
Probably
house.
if you're watching, love it, because everyone, I mean, if you're a good human, you love animals. So
My dog is particularly in your face and nosy. So yeah, so I started kind of figuring things like becoming an adult really. And it's also where I met my husband. So my husband is from Australia, and this all has a crucial part in our story. And we became best friends. We weren't dating or anything. We became best friends. And then after YWAM finished, I went back home and I went back to I had held my job. They let me take a leave of absence. I went back to my manager position at the grocery store. And my husband, who was 20 at the time, just traveled around the US, staying with random people he met at YWAM. And we happened to be one of the people he wanted to stay with. And so he came and stayed 3 weeks. And things started to develop from there. Like maybe this could be more than a friendship, but I was like, but you're in Australia, I'm in Texas. Like this could never work. I had no concept. I think this was also before the world was like really global, with the internet and stuff like that. It was like Australia, like that's insane. That's like the other side of the world. That would
what
never
year
work.
was that?
This was in 2008.
Okay.
2008. So Zoom was just becoming a thing. No, was it Zoom? Yeah, Zoom. Zoom was just becoming a thing. Texting was still like you had the 3 letters. You didn't have like a full keyboard or anything like that. And so we wrote a lot of letters whenever he was living in Australia. But we decided we would trial a long distance relationship. We were best friends. We already had like all the foundations laid of what would make a good relationship. It was just the distance that was really messing with my head. But we trialed a long distance relationship. He went to Mexico for a couple months and was going to come back and visit after that. And we were just going to trial what would long distance look like. And surprisingly enough, like my affections grew in that time. I thought maybe once he goes away for a couple months,
Yeah.
they'll kind of shrink back. I'll get back to my normal life, but our affections grew. And so when he came back, we decided, all right, let's give this a try. And so he went back to Australia. He came back and visited for like 2 weeks and then went back to Australia. And then he had to get back to his normal life and I got back to mine, and we trialed a long distance relationship. And in that time, like we realized like our affection grew. We realized that long distance sucked. There was a huge time change. When it was night there, it was day here. And we were just like, we don't want to do this anymore. Let's just get married. And so it's either we're in or we're out. We knew each other in all sorts of contexts. I really appreciated that we got to know each other as friends in a context like a missions trip. We got to see each other, how we dealt with like frustrations and anger and how we interacted with peers. And so I feel like we got to bypass a lot of the awkward dating phase, and we knew we were compatible. And so we were like, well, let's just get married. And so that was it. Like our relationship was we didn't really date much because we couldn't. And so we ended up getting married in October of 2009. So about 8 months of long distance we had. And in that time I visited Australia, met his family, we got engaged and all that. And then we got married in Texas in 2009 and then moved to Australia. That's where I really began to change. I found every time I kind of got pulled out of my comfort zone and element, it would kind of force me to like grow up and be like, well, what do I think? Not what does my family think? What do I think? And so moving to Australia was really pivotal for me, particularly in my health philosophies and stuff, because it was just a completely different culture. I had grown up in just the standard American culture and diet and didn't really know much outside that. And I remember like his mom, whenever I went to visit them, his mom was like, well, what does she like to eat for breakfast? And I was like, fruit. At 19 years old, I was still Fruit Loops. Like I'm not even like cereal was I still love cereal. I don't eat Fruit Loops anymore, but it was like my vice. If I didn't want to know what to have for dinner, it was cereal. And they were like laughing that Fruit Loops, like they don't eat like that really in Australia. It's not super common. And so she bought me a box of Fruit Loops, and I remember thinking like, these don't taste like normal Fruit Loops. This is weird. So, but it come to find out, like in Australia, Fruit Loops are actually different. So you don't really you didn't realize that here. I was like, this food tastes weird. Like even the Fruit Loops, even the McDonald's, it doesn't taste the same. It's because Australia actually has different standards on food. And so like it blew my mind when you compare the ingredients list of the Fruit Loops in Australia versus the Fruit Loops in America. The Fruit Loops in America, it's all artificial dyes, artificial flavors, artificial colors. But in Australia, there's actually like laws and regulations, especially on food that's marketed to kids as a breakfast food. And you're not allowed to have all that, fair enough, in a breakfast food. And so the Fruit Loops in Australia are dyed with like spirulina and beets, and they're not as vibrant and bright. You can tell a little difference in the color, but who needs like vibrant neon food. Americans only Americans. And so that was, I remember thinking, oh, this tastes funny. And once I lived there and we were married and I was having to cook and stuff, I couldn't actually work for the first 8 months because I was on a visa. And so we applied for the visa when I got there rather than beforehand, because if you apply beforehand, you're at the mercy waiting on them to approve it, and it can take a long time. So we decided to get married, go there, and I would apply for the visa there. But in that time, it meant I couldn't work until my visa was approved. And so I spent 8 months. It took about 8 months to get my visa approved, and I couldn't work. And so I was home and I was like researching and I was cooking and stuff like that. And I had to learn how to cook, but it was totally different. Like, you don't go to a casual, like, people don't go to McDonald's all the time for dinner because it's very expensive there. And there's not a lot of casual dining and stuff. So people really cook from scratch. Like, it's just a normal thing to cook from scratch in Australia. And so I learned to cook, and people I had to get used to, you don't just like grab something out of the freezer and microwave it. You need to cook it from scratch, because people would laugh at like American culture. And I was like, wait, it's different here. Like, that's not just normal for everyone. And so I learned to cook from scratch. They ate, like, even when you go to like a cafe in Australia, there's it's like fresh food. You'll get like avocado on toast or something like that. It's just everything they make. They're very proud of like their agriculture and stuff like that, and everything is just very, very fresh. The processed food is here. I find the processed food is actually often cheaper than the fresh food, whereas in Australia it's the opposite. And so you have more of an incentive to buy fresh food. So I started cooking fresh food, and I felt better. Like, I felt a difference and I felt better. I still had a long way to go in understanding health, but that was when the veil started lifting and I started kind of breaking away from the American norms. And so 8 months goes by and my visa gets approved. And so I decide to get a job. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I want to go back to like retail management? And I was like, ultimately, my goal has always been to be a mom, and I want to be able to stay home with my kids. And so I was like, well, what's something I could do and stay home with my kids? And I thought, hairdressing. You can be a hairdresser at home. You can, that's something that I'd be able to run from my house. And so I started, they have, in Australia, they have these things where you can do an apprenticeship where you like basically on the job training whereas in America, if you want to be a hairdresser, you just got to go to beauty school. Whereas there you can start like a hair salon will hire you and you'll kind of work your way up. And so that's what I did. I started hairdressing, and I was always super into hair and makeup and beauty products. I had my signature Victoria's Secret scent, and Sephora and Ulta were my favorite places to shop. And so hairdressing was like a natural thing. I always had my hair and makeup done, and it was something I was really passionate about. Well, in my apprenticeship, and when you start out, you have to do the dirty work first. So basically that was like washing out colors and shampooing hair and stuff like that. And so that was what I did day in and day out, like 8 to 10 hours a day was like dealing with shampoos and conditioners, washing colors, applying colors, all of that. And what ended up happening was I developed like whole body eczema, like my hands. So, and it still had a disconnect of like, this is what's causing it. But my hands, like I broke out in my hands, my whole body broke out in these awful rashes. And I would go to doctors and like, they would try and give me steroid creams, and it wouldn't help. I was in a lot of pain, and it was like, so uncomfortable. I didn't realize how, like, you don't really like think about your skin that much until something's wrong with it, and then all you can think about is your skin when you can't even sleep at night because you're like scratching scabs open on your legs and stuff like that. And so
sure.
It was pretty miserable, and I still wasn't like, looking back, what I think happened was like I had lived like a non-healthy lifestyle my whole life, and then doing the hairdressing, it was like my toxic burden just spilled over the top. It was like my body was like handling the toxins, and then once I was doing hairdressing, it was just breathing fumes, dealing with fumes, touching chemicals. My body just said, this is enough. It's too much. I can't detox anymore.
Did you connect the dots then? Like, were you connecting what that was happening in real time, or were you like...
It took me a while. This was more hindsight. It took me a while. It was starting to think, so I'd start to try and wear gloves more, but it wasn't really connecting how like it was I had a toxic burden. It was starting to connect that this is not working. And so what happened was I got pregnant. It was unplanned, and it was a surprise. We were going to start a family after I finished my hairdressing apprenticeship, and I got pregnant, and I was like, I worked a few more weeks, but I was exhausted. I was nauseous, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And then the dots It's amazing how getting pregnant and having another life to look after forces you to really think and be like, no, I need to take better care of myself. And so I ended up just quitting, which I'm really glad that I'm not in hairdressing now, but I ended up just quitting because I was like, they weren't going to let me work part-time, or they weren't going to give me preference of like, you don't have to do this and stuff like that. It was like, you are at their mercy. And so I ended up quitting and went back home, was able to support us with his job. I went back home, and that's when the research into health really, really began, was when I had a whole nother life that I had to care for. I started researching everything. I had time, and so I started researching everything. I dabbled in veganism a little bit because at the time there was a lot of big documentaries that really touted the vegan diet. But ultimately, my husband was like, "I'm not being vegan. I'm not going to do that." And so I was like, "Well, that can't work." So then I just kept researching, and what I found in my research was Weston A. Price, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this makes so much sense." The more I looked at veganism, I was like, I'm not seeing this historically. I'm not seeing like cultures adopt this diet, even though they like to tell you that's what, like, that's been a historic millennia, what people are supposed to have. Is like, when you look at history, you actually see a largely animal-based diet. And it just made so much more sense, so much more bang for your buck with animal foods. And like, every culture can raise animals. Not every culture can grow plants year round and stuff like that. And so I'm a researcher. I love to read that fat Weston A. Price. I don't know if you've read it.
Oh yeah,
Nutrition.
I have it on the bookshelf.
Yes. I read that cover to cover, and I was absolutely floored. I was fascinated. What really fascinated me too was the dental stuff.
I was just
Like,
gonna say that. Yep.
I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, that you can actually prevent cavities. You don't have to have yucky crooked teeth like the standard American diet. And that was what was actually, like, our diet was actually what was causing that. And every light bulb just clicked on. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the way. And then I explained to my husband, and he's like, I can get on board with that. Like, that makes sense too. And you're not going to take my steak away and all of that. And so, from there, I really just dove into animal based, and that's when I started learning more about raw milk. And it's highly illegal in Australia. Raw milk is contentious pretty much everywhere, but in Australia, it's highly illegal. By the grace of God, we found this guy who was like an hour and a half from our house, who raised Jersey cows for show. And the milk was a byproduct because they're Jersey cows and they produce milk. And so he would sell that in these big 5-gallon buckets, or not 5-gallon, 1-gallon buckets. And I would go pick that up every single week. And so raw milk, like, really, I started getting super passionate about agriculture and dairy and cows and food and real food. And once you taste raw milk, you're like, I can't ever go back to the other stuff. It's just, there's just no comparison. And so that was what really, like, just started shaping our family. And in that time, my husband, I was researching health. My husband got diagnosed with celiac. I had been telling him for a long time, I think you're gluten intolerant. Australian diet is heavy wheat based. American diet is heavy corn based. Australian diet is heavy wheat based. And he would just have chronic joint pain, headaches, dry skin, all sorts of different issues. And I was like, I think you're celiac. And it took me a long time to convince him, but finally he went without gluten for a long time and realized, yeah, I am celiac. And so that really became a staple in his diet, because I literally just ripped out the staple in his diet when he found out he was celiac, which was wheat. And so raw milk was really like a replacer in that, and his health improved dramatically. He drinks a quart of raw milk a day. He's one of the main reasons why we have our own milk cow, to support his milk
His drinking habit.
yeah. And so, so raw milk became stable. I would drive an hour and a half each way every single week to pick up raw milk from the farm. And after reading Weston A. Price, I was like, I want my kids growing up on this stuff. I don't want to, like, if I can prevent braces, like, not only is that an expense, it's painful, it's embarrassing when, for kids with really crooked teeth. It's like, if I could prevent that, then I will do that with raw milk. I was like, I'll drive an hour and a half each way to get something so delicious as raw milk to bring home to feed my kids, in the hopes of avoiding so many, health issues. And I'll tell you what, my kids' teeth are the healthy, like, they've grown up, every single one of my kids has grown up raw milk in utero. My first one didn't get raw milk in utero, but every other kid got raw milk in utero, and she got raw milk. She was weaned to raw milk she started raw milk when she was like 6 months old. I started giving it to her sippy cup and stuff, but every one of my kids has grown up heavily on raw milk. And of course, there's lots of variables at play here, but they all, like, I took them to the dentist, it was like 3 months ago. Not one of them has a cavity. Not one of them has ever had a cavity. Like, they have perfect teeth. And when their adult teeth come in, they have very wide palates. They're coming in well formed. And I'm like, I absolutely know that our diet and the animal-based diet that they've grown up on has been a huge player in their palate formation and their facial formation, and the fact that they don't have cavities. And they've never had fluoride. We've never had fluoride toothpaste. It's our diet. It's like diet really, really does matter. And now seeing that firsthand, like, it only cements it in my mind that we're on the right path. I am, over time, like, there was a step of faith in believing this and reading this and going, I think that I think this is going to benefit my family in the long run. And then here 15 years later, seeing, yes, this has benefited my family. I am seeing the benefits my whole family is experiencing from this. So in that time, we really started getting passionate about agriculture and just kind of looking at those are my ducks quacking, if you can
I know,
hear that.
I was like, well, you're on a farm, so
We're
yeah.
on a farm now, yes. And so we got really passionate about agriculture, and then looking at the way modern agriculture was set up, and it was just like the mindset of just douse it all in chemicals and grow mass amounts for profit and stuff. We were just like, this isn't right. And so we started getting into regenerative agriculture. Joel Salatin was like a hero for us, and watching what he did, and I was like, I want to do that. We want to do that. And so my husband, we got married young, and he just worked a job and he didn't have a degree. And so at this time, it was after I had my first child. We knew we wanted to move back to Texas, but we're also thinking, like, well, what are we going to do? We can't just like move back to Texas and expect that life is going to fall into place. So he wanted to get a degree. And so he started studying agriculture because we had this newfound passion for agriculture and we wanted to be farmers. We didn't know how that was going to play out in our future, but we knew that's the direction we wanted our lives to go. So he started studying agriculture, and he got a bachelor's degree in agriculture, studying while working full time. He did that in 4 years. And so in that time, while he was studying agriculture, our passion only grew. We researched more, we lived out our lifestyle, and we were the weird ones. Back then, it wasn't super cool. It wasn't trending. Homesteading wasn't trending. Like the Make America Healthy Again movement, there wasn't any of that. And I was also in Australia. And so we were a little weird in how extreme we were in some of our like decisions as far as like vaccines and different things go. But we were passionate.
So he was studying agriculture in Australia, or is that back when you guys were back in the States?
That was in Australia. In preparation for moving to the States, he started his degree in Australia because we wanted him to come to the US with a degree so that he had something to kind of build on when we got here.
I was thinking, and I don't know, maybe you guys do. As soon as you said he was studying agriculture, I was thinking, okay, if this was in the States, I'm so curious, and I still am. I'm curious what that looks like, because I feel like they're going to be doing what is typical in schools nowadays, and it's teaching their own narrative of, what the way that, and I would think industrialized agriculture is what's going to be taught. Yes. And I actually had another farmer that's going to be on the podcast that I've talked to that he did both. So he went in and learned it that way, but he's thinking very differently. And so he's practicing very different. So he got the best of like learning what they're teaching and thinking, no, but also going in and doing it the right way. So his practice of agriculture looks different than what he was typically taught. And I'm wondering how your husband in Australia, what were they teaching? Is it something that's very different than what is being taught here?
Yes. So it was very much industrial agriculture, but Australian industrial agriculture, which is better in a lot of ways than American industrial agriculture, but it was still very much conventional agriculture. And so we knew like there was no like regenerative agriculture degree that like just like holistic health in the medical world, that's something you have to learn on your own. You don't get taught that in your degree. And so he did a conventional agriculture degree and learned the conventional ways, but I think it was important foundationally to understand their ways and why they do things.
Oh yeah.
And then to kind of fit, to kind of get a balanced view of both. And I think it's been interesting, our journey into our own farming, and we learned it, and it was easy to go whenever we were in the midst of it was easy to go, that's so wrong, that's so wrong, that's so wrong. And then experiencing it, we're like, I understand why conventional agriculture, I'm not saying it's right, but I understand why they've gone that direction. Agriculture is hard. Farming is so hard. And so I understand why they do this kind of stuff because it's like, if you have to make if profit is your biggest concern and you have to make a profit, then these are the shortcuts you have to take. And I think that's fundamentally a problem with society, is we want food fast and cheap.
Yeah.
And it was like, you look at like raw milk in our area sells for about $15 a gallon. And people do not want to pay that. Like, that is outrageous. I haven't bought conventional milks. I don't fully know what it costs in the store, but I think it's probably like $4 or $5 for a gallon of like conventional pasteurized milk. And I'm like, so yes, it sounds outrageous to pay $15 a gallon for milk, but if you want cheap milk and you want cheap agriculture, then they have to take those shortcuts. There's no other way to do it. And I think it's just the problem happened in our society when we shifted from like when it was like a bunch of small family farms providing for their local communities to let's do this on a mass scale, and only a few there's only like a few farming areas in the US providing for the entire country. And it's like, I'm starting to see a resurgence in little farms popping up all around, which is really cool to see, people wanting to support their local farmer. But what people have to understand is you have to pay a little more. We have one milk cow, and well, I have two milk cows. One of them is in milk right now. And we hand milk her. We milk her twice a day, and we feed her non-GMO corn and soy-free grain to help supplement. We grow fodder for her. We have an indoor hydroponic growing system where we grow fodder for her, and we put so much time and energy into this cow. And she rules our life, and but this cow provides, she's feeding two calves right now, and she's feeding like several families milk. And I'm like, this is so cool that this work we're putting into feeds two calves and several families. But we calculated it. It's like, we have to be up like the time it takes to get her food ready, prepare her food, get her out to the stanchion, milk her, take the milk in, strain it, process it, clean everything up, freeze it, get everything set. Like, we worked it out that we're paying ourselves about $5 an hour. Selling the milk at $15 a gallon, we're paying ourselves $5 an hour. And that wasn't even include all the costs we put in food. That was just the amount of time that we put into our cow. And so it was like, people have to understand agriculture is not cheap. And if you look at farming, industrial farming, there's a highest suicide rate in farmers than any other industry. And it's because they're not getting, like, they're at the mercy. They don't get to set their own prices. They're like slaves to the big corporate businesses who say, this is all we'll pay for your food because this is what we want to sell it for. And so it's a mindset. It's a mindset that I understand why they cut corners and why they have to do that if they have to make a living and profit is driven. But I think it's a whole mindset that needs to happen in society, that food is not supposed to be dirt cheap. It's like, you're supposed to be paying that farmer a fair wage to give you a quality product. And this is also the first time in society where food budget is like this much of our whole budget.
Isn't that crazy?
All of society, if you look back, like starting maybe in the 1800s, like they worked to eat. Like, food was like this much of their budget, whereas here we want food to be this much of our budget. And I think it's just a whole mental change that needs to happen of society. Is like, food is the most important part of our lives. Like, it is what fuels us. It is what keeps us going. It is what will keep us from being sick. It is what will avoid these hefty medical bills. And so it's like, food will be this much, medical bills will probably be this much. And little do people know, if they did this in food, they could probably take away most of the medical bills. Like, we have not needed conventional, like my husband did an injury. So for an injury, he was chopping down a tree and tore a rotator cuff. And so he did need surgery on that. Outside of like a surgery, like, we don't need the medical system because we're not sick. And when we're sick, like chronically sick, we're able to like nourish our bodies, and our bodies are strong and able to fight it off themselves. And it's like, yes, we live in a fallen world, and there is, you're not going to be perfect. Like, if you eat a healthy diet, everything's going to go perfect for me. You're never going to get sick, never going to have problems. That's not it. But far and wide, our society is reliant and putting their money in healthcare rather than food. And it's just backwards.
I have people all the time when I ask them, like, hey, do you love what you do? Like, I think that it's important to love and have a passion for what you do and how you live. And when I ask the majority of people this question, they're like, no. And I'm like, why don't you just quit your job and do something that you love? And the answer is always, I can't, I need my insurance. And I'm like, why do you feel like you need your insurance? You know what I mean? And it's because they're sick all the time. And I'm like, well, if we, like you just said, if we change this around, focus on what we eat, focus on getting more sunshine, focus on the basics, focus on the things that heal the body and nourish the body, you just take what you just said and it flips the switch completely. And
Yeah.
I'm like, then you wouldn't need your insurance. Then you don't need your job that gives you the insurance. You know what I mean? It's this whole backward thing where I'm like, it's a relearning, and
Yeah.
you're really lucky in a lot of ways that you learned it. Like, I don't know what age you were when you started learning this. Like, I'm a little envious that you learned it before you were pregnant or while you were pregnant and as you were kind of going through that, because I started to learn it after I had my first one or two. You know what I mean? And I have seven, but like, and so I feel good. I'm like, I always joke with my oldest, like, you got all the terrible stuff. You know what I mean? Like, sorry. But, I think that the sooner that people can wake up to this, hear this, start to question, ask better questions, and start to shift very slowly the way that they do everyday life, they'll end up the same way that we are, with knowing these things, implementing these things, seeing the changes, kicking out the insurance. Mike, we don't have insurance. We don't go to the doctor. And people find that like crazy. They're like, you never go to the doctor? I'm like, no. Like
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah.
So it is a backwards way, but I feel like that backwards way is starting to not be so backwards. People are starting to catch on a little bit. And you're either the kind of person that is so vehemently opposed to it because you're so ingrained and you're not willing to bend. Like, you're just like, no, like it's the people that are so anti anything that we do, we trust the experts. You don't do raw milk. We trust the experts. You go get your vaccines. We trust the experts. You do. And they're just so like, I don't know what it is with that kind of person and that mindset, but they're not even willing to be open to, let's just have the conversation. You know what I mean? Let me
Yeah.
hear and explore this.
It's
But
different and it's weird, and it would cause, and I think the biggest factor is it would force them to make a lot of changes in their own
yeah,
life, and to then actually think, man, I had it wrong. And
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people want to admit that. And so you'll find there's kind of a shift in society, and there's people that are like starting to question and be like, oh my goodness, and actually change. And there's people that are getting more vehement, and it's like they can't admit that they've been lied to, or that what they've done has not been the best. And yeah, it's yeah.
So you guys were in the States when the idea of, or was it like, it seems like it was more of an evolution, or was it like a lights on one day and you're like, I want to start creating and doing urban farm and these products? I know that you said that you were, and maybe that was more of what you're doing now. Were you starting to utilize farming and the foods that you were producing to help with community stuff, and then it evolved, or what did that look like?
So we lived in Australia for 9 years. For those years, Jesse was studying his agriculture degree. Instagram came out. When did Instagram come out? It came out in like 2011, I think it was, because I made an account pretty soon after Instagram came out, and I named myself on my account Urban Farm Wife, even though he wasn't a farmer yet. But I was like, that's my goal.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be a farm wife. And we live urban. So Urban Farm Wife, that's what I named myself. And I was like, I don't care if it's ridiculous because he's not a farmer yet. That's what I'm going to be. And so I started just chronicling, like back in those days, like just taking pictures of food and talking about, like, if you go back to my really early posts on my account, I'll have like a non-aesthetically pleasing picture of a block of lard, and then I'll just talk about the benefits of lard and stuff. And so I started chronicling. It was more of a creative outlet for me. I love having a creative outlet. I've got that drive and stuff. And so being a stay-at-home mom, I really found joy in that. I was never trying to make money off of it. I didn't actually make money off my account until very recently. It was just chronicling my journey and trying to educate people, because like you said, like, people just don't know, and people need education, and you're not getting it mainstream. You're not going to get that from the doctor, the dietitians, all of that. And so it was just trying to educate people, and I'm just so passionate about learning. I love learning. And when I was in Australia, I experimented constantly. Like, I have tons of fails, tons of wins. And so, like, making my own skincare, making my own potions, making my own medicines, making my own tinctures, and making my own yogurt and sour. Like, that was what I did. Like, that was my hobby. And I found so much joy in it. And it was fascinating to me, like making kombucha and learning the ferments and making water kefir and yogurt and all the different things. And so I really just spent my whole time in Australia just chronicling what I was doing. People found it intriguing. We were a little weird, but people pre-COVID, people weren't as hostile towards it. It was just kind of, they would kind of find it for like our people in our real life of like, oh, that's funny. That's Liz. She's our hippie friend and stuff like that. But I just found it fascinating. And so I would just educate people and just put stuff out there, show people my experiments, show the meals I was cooking. At one time, I thought maybe I wanted to put out a cookbook of like try and take modern favorites and make them healthier and stuff. And so it was just really an outlet for me chronicling my journey. And then we moved to the States in 2018, I believe it was. And that's when it was kind of like, what's going to happen now? What are we going to do? And it was a lot harder than I anticipated. We sold everything in Australia. We had no car, nothing. We sold everything, and we didn't own a house in Australia. It was very expensive to own a house in Australia, so we just rented. So it's not as if we sold the house and had equity.
Right.
We moved to the U.S. with 3 kids and not a lot of money to our name, and we literally had to start from scratch. And so maybe I had loftier ideas of what it was going to look like, but it was hard. And so I kind of creating for a couple of years, like almost 2 years, because it was survival mode. My husband was working 2 jobs, so he came back with his degree. We had no contacts. Like, we have this degree, but we have no contacts. And so he started off working in a plant nursery because that's the job he could get. And then in the evenings, he waited tables at a barbecue restaurant, and he worked 2 jobs for a very long time. And it was just like trying to get on our feet in survival mode. And like, we still had this passion, but it was like, we've just got to get on our feet. It's not like we could just walk into a farm and start farming. And so it was working our butts off, just working our butts off. And I was still at home full time, still cooking everything from scratch. As soon as we moved there, I found my raw milk dairy and was supporting my raw milk farmer. And
you're talking about Texas, right?
This is in Texas, yeah. And so my husband was working 2 jobs, and finally he got down to 1 job, but it still wasn't in like a farming industry. It was also another plant nursery, because urban, that's kind of what's available. And so he was working 1 job, and then COVID hit, and that kind of changed everything. And I started getting back on my account again, speaking about like the ridiculousness of what was going on. And then again, feeling that renewed passion in educating people. Cause I'm like, people just don't know. Like, how are people falling for this stuff? And I was like, people just don't know. And so I got back into my account and started educating people again. And again, I wasn't selling skincare or starting skincare. That came once we actually started farming. But at the same time, I was still making my own skincare. This going all the way back to my teenage years. I struggled with acne my whole life. I was on Proactive well into my 20s because it was the only thing that would keep me from having a face full of acne, which is awful. And even when I started getting healthier and I was in Weston A. Price, I would try and wean myself off Proactive, and my skin had gotten addicted to it. So my skin was like, as soon as I would try and get off it, my skin would just like break out even more. So that was one of the things that I compromised in. And I was like, I'm still going to use Proactive Hope.
No, you're fine. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm like wondering like I'm wondering your thoughts on all of that. Like, why the body does, what was going on during that time frame when you say that. Are you all right?
Yep, I'm all right. Sorry. I've been talking so much. My throat's like, you haven't talked as much.
I know. Yeah, we didn't even say that at the beginning. Liz is recovering from being out of commission this week.
Anyways, so yes, I had acne, and getting off Proactive was something that was hard to do. Where was I?
Well, you were talking about making your own skincare, and that was like your one thing at that time where you were like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just going to stay on this for now,
Yeah.
which I do want you to talk about too, because I think there's a lot of people, a lot of teens and a lot of moms, parents that with their teens that are allowing their teens to be put on Accutane and really harsh things that are causing problems. But they say that they're like, well, if I get off, this is what happens when I'm on it. It seems so having your take on that, because I never went through that as a teenager. So it's nice to hear from someone who did go through it and has the mindset that you do now on how you would handle things.
So my husband was on Accutane as a teenager. He also had acne-prone skin, and now has rheumatoid arthritis, which we've been able to manage with diet. He's on no medications or anything, but celiac and rheumatoid arthritis. And we 100% believe it was the Accutane, of course, because that is known side effects, and there's lawsuits from people who develop rheumatoid arthritis after taking Accutane. And so we strongly believe that that is correlated. And I feel sad that that was the extreme that he felt like he needed to. But as a teenager, acne is so demoralizing. Like, teens are ruthless, kids are ruthless. And when you have it right on your face that you're supposed to face the world, it really knocks your confidence. And so I understand why people want to take these extreme measures, because it's literally like, how do I face the world when, like, my flaws are just right there on my face? Other people with different struggles, you can hide them. If you have like gastrointestinal struggles or different things, you can hide them. When it's on your face, there's no hiding it. The whole world sees you have acne. And so I understand why people take those extremes, but I am super passionate about teaching people that you don't have to take those extremes. Like, you can prevent it. And there is an element of puberty that there's a natural element as your body goes through all the hormonal changes that can happen, but it doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be cystic, and there are natural solutions. And much acne stems from your gut. And once you take care of that and realize like how much our diet affects that, acne will also fix itself. And your skin barrier has a huge impact on whether or not you have acne and stuff. So I'm super passionate about that, because it took me a long time to get off Proactive. I was crunchy for years and into holistic health and eating a Weston A. Price style diet for years before I even was able to get off Proactive. And so I totally understand that. And one of the things in Urban Farm Collection and why I created my skincare was, another thing I found frustrating was I was jealous of like the people who could walk into Ulta and shop the skincare aisle and buy something that had the pretty packaging, and, you know, that they just buy something for fun that they just wanted to try because it looked pretty, and get excited for their skincare routine. I was never excited for my skincare routine. I would slap on Proactive that would bleach, and I would have bleach marks on all of my shirts and my pillows and stuff like that, because it's like a bleach. So I never enjoyed my skincare. It was just, this is survival to keep my face from having pimples all over it. And so I always felt sad. I was like, I want to be able to enjoy my skincare routine, but I just can't. Every time I would try something new that I would buy from Ulta, or even when I was crunchy from the health food shop, I would just break out. And not everything that's holistic is okay for acne prone skin. There's no one size fits all for skincare. And that's what I'm most passionate about, is helping people with acne, because it's something that I know firsthand how hard it is to treat, how hard it is to live with. So yes. So the skincare line was born out of a desire to bring natural solutions. So I was making my own skincare for ages. I finally got off Proactive and was able to find, it was like a tea tree foaming cleanser. And then I would make my own serum with just jojoba oil and essential oils, or sometimes just plain jojoba oil. And then after healing my gut and my skin barrier, that was what I was able to do to keep my acne at bay. It was never as perfectly clear as it was when I was on Proactive, but it was good enough. Whereas now my skin is like perfectly clear. So as I learned more and experimented more and tried more, like, I've never had such clear skin in my life except for when I was on Proactive. And so yeah, so I've been making my own skincare for a while, and fast forward, I'm kind of like bouncing different places, but
No, it's okay. And I feel like I have so many questions, but I don't want to interrupt. So yeah, like,
if you want to interrupt, you're totally free to. But
well, real quick before you talk about what was happening, that you're going to move forward into the skincare, is what would your advice be to someone who has that acne right now that wants to do it the right way, but it's one of those things where it's like, you can't tell someone rewind, prevent, then it's okay, because that's not going to happen. So it's like, what do you tell someone who's dealing with that and struggling with that right now? Like, I'm curious what your advice would be. And obviously, I don't think that it's going to happen to your children, seeing what their diet and their upbringing, their lifestyle looks like. They had that preventative aspect all along, but someone who is learning this now, that's like, I don't want to do it this way. Where would you tell them to start? What would you tell them to do?
I would say, I understand your temptation to want to go to something like Accutane, or I know someone whose doctor prescribed them antibiotics for acne, and they were perpetually on antibiotics. And I was like, I get that there's this temptation to want that quick fix, but I promise you, in the long run, it's not worth it. That quick fix comes with a whole possibility of side effects that will affect you in the future more than a face with some pimples on it as a teenager, I promise. And so I would just say, allow yourself time to heal. Having a face full of acne shows there's some imbalances in your body. And if you want to nuke those imbalances just to get rid of them, you can do that. But it's going to lead to imbalances later in life that are probably going to be worse and harder to treat than your acne now. So I would say give it time and be patient, because it's not an overnight thing. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. It's a cause of a lifestyle, a lifetime of not taking care of your gut, not being properly nourished, probably destroying your skin barrier. And so I'd say be patient, but it can happen. I'm living proof. You can heal if you're patient and if you put in the hard work. And I can tell you the hard work is worth it. So the first step, anyone dealing with acne, would be like, address your gut. Gut health is everything. And you're not just doing it to keep pimples at bay. You're doing it because that is going to be the foundation for your whole life, for health for your whole life. A properly functioning gut, meaning the food that you actually eat is getting absorbed. You're actually, like, you're not throwing your dollars away on fancy food that you can't absorb because your gut is not absorbing food properly and it's imbalanced. So I'd say start working on your gut, start working on your skin barrier, start working on finding some natural solutions that will help you keep it at bay and help you heal. But be patient. Like, and I think that's the thing with our society is it's a, I want it now. Everything is, I want it now. And healing is not a, you get it now. It's it's a years long process. And that's hard for someone to hear when they're like, I just want these pimples to go away now.
Yeah.
I think any teenage girl who was suffering with that, I would, be patient and gracious with them and sympathetic, because I totally understand, but also really try and educate them of the importance of taking care of their body to help, because that your skin is just a reflection of what's going on inside. And it's like, you've got to fix what's going on inside to have beautiful skin. And once you fix that, you will have beautiful skin. It just is going to take time to heal. And it's so worth it than doing a quick fix that we're still dealing with the consequences today with my husband. He's on a very strict, like, we're able to manage his rheumatoid arthritis. He's on a very strict diet. He's animal-based, but just meat, raw dairy, vegetables, fruits, and that's the bulk of his diet. So yeah, so there's going to be so many consequences to trying to get the I want it now quick fix. You might get the beautiful skin now, but it's not going to be worth it in the future. Whereas if you give it time and you really work on healing from the inside, your future is so bright and you're going to be so glad you did it. Like right now, like, I have the clearest skin I've ever had, and I'm 37 years old, and I put in the hard yard, but I'm feeling it in how I age. Like, I'm feeling the difference of all the years of work that I put into, and I'm telling you, it's so worth it. When you look at society, we're not aging well. We're having to, like, women have to, like, we have to inject our faces. They've normalized, like, chronic pain, like, oh, it's just normal, you're just getting old. And I'm like, we're not aging well. It's because we're not taking care of ourselves when we're young, when we have those opportunities to set ourselves up. And it's just, again, it's a whole mind shift that we just need to teach society. And the younger people can get started understanding, like, the root causes of things and learning how to take care of their bodies, the more we're going to save them from pain in the future. So it's like, I take it as like, I'm doing them a favor, like really trying to educate them and teach them now when they're young is going to set them up for a future of probably fertility, like infertility is at an all-time high because of, all the things that these young girls are doing to their bodies in the name of beauty and, the Accutane, all these things and not nourishing ourselves, wrecking our hormones with artificial, synthetic fragrances, all these different things. And it's like we're infertility and just that health is at an all-time low these days. And it's like, we're not doing anyone any favors by just giving them these bomb quick fixes, because like in the future, it's like we want them to live a vibrant life now, but we also are worried about them living a vibrant life in the future. And in order to do that, we've got to educate people younger. We've got to encourage people to start younger and understand that your choices now depict your, like, how you're going to feel and look and live decades from now. And it's like, we've got to make better choices now.
Yeah.
And there's no quick fix for anything. It's a lifestyle change. Like we have to, you don't get to just like, oh, I do all these holistic things. I fix my skin. Now I get to go back to how I was. It's like, we've got to have a mindset shift as a society of what our lifestyle needs to look like in order to live a healthy and sustainable life.
Yeah, there's no pause and reflection because it's like what you said. It's this unseen consequence that they're just not recognizing. That they're late. What they see is said friend has acne, gets on harsh whatever chemical synthetics, acne goes away. I want that too. You know what I mean? That's what's seen, but the unseen is that consequence that happens later on down the road. And it's one of those things. It's straight up a gamble. I think even if people know about it, they're like, oh, like, you know, I'm willing to have that risk because I want the reward right now. It's like you said it before. It's this quick society. We want everything now. What do you think about this? Is really random, but I was thinking about it because I've just become so opposed to anything that is outside or as close to nature as possible. So I see a lot of women, a lot of my friends, and I'm not, there's no judgment on this because everybody's on their own journey and experience. But me personally, I'm just so naturally like my own gut and intuition and cells tell me like, no, stay away. But it's tempting because you see people on these peptides that are shooting themselves up with different peptides being like for skin, for weight loss, for whatever, being like, these are so great. And I'm just like, I'm wondering what your thought is, or if you even have one on all of these. Have you seen all of this going on?
Yes, I think what we're watching with our generation is we're starting to get older. And I don't think anyone likes it. I think our society is obsessed with youth and beauty, and our age and generation is kind of like going out of the youth phase, and it's hard. And nobody wants to leave it, and everyone's clinging to, no, what's going to make me most youthful. And I think the majority of it is gimmick. Like it's sad because it's easy to prey on women when society is built on a woman's worth being her beauty. And so then it's easy to prey on those kind of insecurities and market them and make money off of them. And so I'm like you. I don't believe that there's any one supplement that's going to come out that's just going to rock your world. I don't think that's how it works. I think what's going to rock your world is a lifetime of living healthfully. You're going to age better. And it's like, I think people are kind of realizing in our generation they haven't been living healthfully, and they're starting to see the consequences of that and wanting a quick fix. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. That's why we need to educate people to start younger. But I firmly believe that aging is natural and we shouldn't freak out about it. And women are allowed to age just like men, and there's nothing ugly about it. It's just a process. It's like our whole mindset needs to shift as a society, because I'm like, I don't look like these. We go to a church and we have these dear old ladies in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I don't look at them and see their wrinkles. I see the beauty of who they are. And I think and I still see them as beautiful. Like you can still dress classy and do your hair and be older and be beautiful. But I think our society equates that with, if you're not youthful, you're not beautiful, and that you need that. And I'm like, I just don't think that there's anything I'm naturally repelled to anything that's really, really hyped up, because I think I've seen it too many times. Marketing, and if you get someone to take it and you pay a big influencer to say it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then everyone thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, not knowing that influencer was paid to tell you that. And I just see the inner workings of all that, and I'm just naturally opposed to that as well. Like I don't take any, I take very few supplements. I try and I live a whole food lifestyle. I put everything for me is about nutrient density, and that's what I focus on. And I think if you focus on that from a young age, you will naturally age better. Yeah. I see women who have taken care of themselves for a very long time. They just naturally age better. Like their skin is just more plump. It's like, not that it will never wrinkle. It's like, I'm sorry, we're human. And that's what happens. Gravity will have an impact on your skin and you will age. But if you're healthy and nourished, you will age slower. You just will. And I think, again, it's a mindset shift of, I don't want to put in the hard yards because I won't see the benefits for a very long time. I want something
now.
It's going to give the benefits now. And so I think I'm just not, I don't follow the trends of the latest supplement.
Well, I think for me too, you made a really good point in something that I wasn't thinking of, and that is just like what does like aging really look like? What should be our expectations with aging? How should we be teaching our children about what aging should but for me too, like there is that part of the conversation of your worth and like what the expectation should be and why. But also like I've just never historically seen anecdotally and even clinically over time that any of these things that are hyped up end up playing out to be good things in the long run. Like and I'll use the Ozempic or something like that because it is so popular right now because it is such a physical thing of like weight loss and people seeing that. We've already started see in clinically, if people care about research and clinical studies, the negative outcome that's happening from people that are taking, these drugs. And
Yeah.
I'm like, so I've just never seen it, whether it's something for anti-aging in your skin or it's something that you claim to be as close to natural as possible. It just doesn't seem right to me to be injecting yourself with these things. And I know I don't have to, I feel so confident in saying, just wait, because, a number of years down the road, whether at 1 or 10, you're going to see the negative consequences of what this was doing all along. I just don't think that you can do that to the body. Like, it's not like the body is not like a plug and play with very singular synthetic drugs. It's just
Yeah.
not. It doesn't work that way. It needs those things that are, the way nature intended. It's you'd think of something like an egg or whatever. It's not just choline, it's a number,
Yeah,
so
you
many.
don't just go, okay, well, I'll take choline and I'll
Right.
take that. And then I get, yeah,
Because people hear these
everything works
words.
synergistically together in nature.
And I think that it's sad too. You have parents that are saying like, "Oh, choline is so great for the developing brain," and so they're inserting, like you just said, a singular thing. Like, "Oh, we need to put that into a formula," and I'm like, "No, like,
Oh,
why don't?"
vitamin D is good. Let's start putting synthetic vitamin D in milk. And it's like,
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why don't we just do the things in their natural state from the very beginning and not put ourselves in this bind where we feel like you're in this acute need for something so drastic? You know what I mean?
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah. So anyways, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And for me, I just feel like, we're going to start to see, we already have. I mean, if people look, we don't need to look at the new thing and say, well, let's just see how it pans out. I think we have enough historical data all along with these things that are man-made synthetics of, and how they're marketed to, I think we should know by now. I think we should
Yeah.
see it and be like, no, we've seen this enough before.
And one thing I've noticed, if you notice, you look at the beauty trends, what are they all trying to mimic? Health. Why do people put blush on? Because they want to mimic those naturally healthy, rosy cheeks. Why are people injecting their lips? Because they want to mimic what naturally full lips are. Why are people, getting braces? Because they want that naturally wide palette that humans are supposed to have. Why are they doing all this stuff to the hair? Because they want shiny, glossy, healthy looking hair. Why are we obsessed with breast implants? Because the womanly figure is a sign of fertility. Everyone is obsessed, whether they realize or not, of wanting to look healthy. And all these are band-aid fixes that make yourself look healthy when you could just be healthy.
Yeah.
And naturally, like I found, like through my diet, I'm seeing as I age that I'm like, I don't actually have varicose veins. And I think that's a pretty normal thing at this age to have and stuff like that. And I'm like, the trends today are all trying to mimic what a healthy human being actually looks like. And if you just live your life as a healthy human being, giving your body what it needs to fuel and run properly, that's how you will age.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's even the term human being, it's like we need to be in a state of being, not a state of thinking that it's this insertion of. It's like, no, we need to be. I like that. I took us off course a little bit, but I feel like that was worth it. Tell me a little bit about, you were starting to talk about how your skincare came to be, obviously through what you experienced as a teen, obviously through the experience that your husband and you had of farming and putting that into practice. Where along the way you were playing with it for yourself, and I guess that my question was that you were in the middle of is was it an evolution, or was it I wanted to, were people asking, can I use it? Like, how did it turn into that?
It was an evolution. So I think I was talking about this with my husband last night. Skincare line I created is basically my 15 years of research, my 15 years of experimentation, my fails, there's all sorts of in those time wins and fails, learning what works together and what doesn't. Like I'll be like, I'm going to use lard like I use tallow, and it doesn't work like tallow. Lard, the consistency of lard is totally different than tallow. So my skincare line is basically my 15 years of experimentation. I'm offering that to people because all of my skincare is stuff that people could make themselves. And I'm not afraid to say that. I don't say I have this proprietary thing that only I can make. It's like, it's all stuff people could make themselves, but it's going to take you a while to kind of perfect it because it took me a long time to perfect it. And I had a lot of fails in the process. It's basically a culmination of all the years of research, all the years of experimentation put together for people to buy so that they don't have to do that. They can spend their time doing other things. Not everyone is as passionate about concocting random things in the kitchen as I am. That was genuinely my hobby for like 15 years. And so it was really born out of that of like, I can offer this to people and they can bypass all the years of research and experimentation that I did. And I think that's how it started. It started with one thing, which was my golden yolk serum. And it was the combination of like jojoba, which has been like, that was what helped me get off Proactive, but then infusing it with the botanicals and then adding tallow, and the egg yolks are actually really good for acne. They're rich in vitamin A and ingredients that are really good for acne. So it started off with that and people wanted it. And I had been building my Urban Farm Life account for years. I guess I started technically in 2011. So I've been building rapport with people, and people understood my values. They understood, like what my philosophies on health were. And so they just trusted it. And I think people appreciate having someone who they trust, who they can just be like, I buy my skincare from you because I trust all of the work that you've put in and stuff like that. And I don't have to then do that myself. So it was really born out of a want for myself. So I took a few different aspects. I was like, I want all of my skincare to be acne safe because I need to be able to use it. There's a lot of natural skincare that I can't use. Anything olive oil based, I personally can't use. Olive oil breaks me out horribly. Not that olive oil in itself is bad. It's just not good for acne prone skin. And so not everything holistic is going to be safe for acne prone skin. So that's one thing that I'm going to make sure it's safe for my skin. So I can tell everyone I have acne prone skin, and everything I make, I'm able to use on my own skin. And then two, I want it to be pretty. Like I was always so sad that my skincare came in little white bottles that looked like something from a pharmacy, and I didn't get to have pretty stuff on my counter that made me excited to do my own skincare. So I was like, I want it to be pretty. And I also have strict standards on what kind of oils and what kind of ingredients I put in there. I want it to be nourishing. Everything I eat and everything I put on my skin should have nutritive value, because our skin needs nourishment and our bodies need nourishment. And if it doesn't have nutritive value, then for me, what's the point? Like, what's the point? Yeah. And so I combined all those three things of like, I want someone to be excited to do their skincare routine, teens and moms alike. I want it to appeal and just be beautiful in its own right. I want it to be acne safe, and not like a lot of people that use my skincare don't struggle with acne. It's nutrient dense and it's good skincare for all, but it's also safe for acne prone skin. That was a big importance to me. And then it has to do something for your skin. There's no pointless filler ingredients. If you look at a lot of skincare in like Ulta and these big box stores, you have to think, how many people are these people paying? So this skincare, so say I'm going to make up a brand because I'm not going to put shade on a brand. Say the skincare is called Lovely.
I was going to say the same thing. I actually was like, what word could I throw her way? I was going to say the same thing.
Lovely. So you have this lovely bottle of skincare, and the people who manufactured it, they probably have a facility that they pay rent to. They have employees that they have to pay. They have to pay for all the raw ingredients and stuff. And then they sell it to Ulta. And then Ulta has tons of overhead and all these different, like you have to look at when you buy something from a big box store, there's CEOs in there, multiple CEOs that probably need to be paid. There's all these different people that need to be paid. So the raw ingredient, the actual cost of the little skincare bottle that you bought is probably extremely minimal. But I get it. It's how business works. There has to be a huge level of markups to pay for all of the people that are involved in getting this product to you. I think there's a push now where people are enjoying supporting the people who make it, because we don't have to do crazy markups because we make the product and we sell it to you. And so you get a product that's much higher quality, and we're able to sell it to you at a very reasonable price because we don't have CEOs and all these different markups to pay. And that was one thing that shocked me when I was looking at the ingredients of like popular skincare. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I buy raw ingredients. I buy things in wholesale. I'm like, this is crap. I was just, if it shocked me, I'd be like, charging $120 for this. This cost them less than $1, especially because I know the kind of bulk things they would be buying. I'm like, they're using sunflower oil as a base. Like, everything, single one of my products is in a base of jojoba oil. And on my Instagram one time, I showed people like, okay, here is a wholesale drum of jojoba, organic jojoba. Here is a wholesale drum of organic sunflower oil. The price was like 10 times difference. So you're like, when you see things in a base of sunflower oil, there's a reason for that. And it's not because sunflower oil is amazing for your skin. Yeah. Look at the price difference. Just look at the price difference.
Yeah.
So I've been able to have an insight behind the scenes that most people don't have because I'm dealing with large scale suppliers. I'm buying raw ingredients and I'm seeing cost and prices. It's shocked me how cheap so much of the stuff that's sold for a lot of money actually is. I'm like, dude, you can make that yourself. And I promise you, you wouldn't have to pay $150 for that. But these big box stores, they put more money into marketing, celebrity endorsements. That's where the money's going. Also with CEOs, with wholesale margins and stuff like that. They also have huge marketing budgets and paying these celebrities, influencers, big money to promote their product and tell you it's the best thing since sliced bread. Unknowing consumers trust that without having the knowledge of this is actually really cheap. And that's one thing I've learned to do is read the ingredient labels and be able to go, no, this didn't cost them much. Nope, this didn't cost them much. Nope, this is a cheap filler ingredient. And so that was one thing that we promised we would never do, is have insane markups or cut corners with cheap filler ingredients. Like, if I can't do it, I'm not gonna use sunflower oil as a base just because I could make more money by doing that and make my product go further. It's like, no, I think that's an inferior product and I'm not gonna do that. So that's really surprised me. And I think people just don't understand because they don't see the other side of the coin. They don't see the cost of goods and they don't see behind the influencer culture that these influencers are promoting what pays them. And there's some influencers, not all influencers are like this. I will not make a blanket statement on that, but there is a lot of influencers who get paid big dollars to promote these things, and people have followed them and they trust them that, oh, this is great. And it's like, yeah, it's great. They're paying them $10,000 to tell you it's great. Of course they're going to tell you it's great. They're going to pay $10,000 and then you buy this product thinking they just organically think it's great. And it's like, actually, they got paid $10,000 to say it was great. Would they have done that on their own? Probably not.
I also think too that you don't know, and I'm saying that they don't know what they don't know. So I think that there's people out there that they don't know and they haven't gone down the rabbit holes that we have with understanding health the way that we do. And so when they find something, they're finding it through the same outlet usually. Like, they're finding a friend or another influencer that they follow. Like, this one, I'm using like a said influencer, like whoever that is, but they're like looking and seeing, oh, this person is saying that this product is so great and they're an affiliate with them. I'm going to sign up and be an affiliate. I'm going to try it too. And I think it's one of those things where mentally, like, what you believe has so much power in your life. So I feel like it's one of those things you could believe that this skincare, which in reality is not that great, is because you're seeing it with, the Hollywood signs and all the influencer that looks so beautiful in your mind is using it, and the money that she's making. All of these other things come into consideration for this one person who doesn't understand health at the way that other people do and are looking at it, and she just doesn't know. So she may truly in her heart of hearts believe, like, I love this product. I think it's great. I don't want to say that everybody is like, manipulative. I think there's a number of people out there who just don't know. They're just like, they don't know. And they think, great, I'm using it. They used it. They got results. And then you feel like you did too. It's the whole placebo effect. They're like, oh, I'm using it and I love it, I'm like, well, maybe it's just your belief that you're loving it so much that's causing you to, think that it's working so well, and it's really not. It's maybe some other variable in your life that you're not giving credit to. Maybe it's the fact that you're so blissfully unaware. But for me, I've come to a point in my life, and this has also been an evolution on my end, where I hear from people like you, and that's literally what WellHaus is I wanted to connect with people that were making the things that I was buying. I was like, I want to, one, one, start doing smaller, US, and then even more. Like, obviously, I'm way involved with my community and my farmers markets and the people that I support here. But I wanted it to be where people start to know their neighbor, call that the US, call that their little city, their little town. And it feels so much better. I feel so much better if I know I'm supporting Liz and I know her. Like we've talked. I know how she does things. I know the hands that touch it. I know her process. I understand her why behind it. So it's not just me supporting someone that I love and I would be friends with, but also her family and all the creative endeavors that she's trying to do in her life to serve humanity. Those are all things that I'm pouring into because you're pouring into it too on that back side, on the other end. And for me, I feel like that's what this is for. This is what this is for me, is I want people to hear this, understand that, and start applying it and then see the benefit. I'm not like, hey, if it doesn't work out for you, if you don't like supporting local and you don't like supporting the people that are doing things at a much higher quality, higher integrity, then that's fine once you try it. But I don't see that. I've never seen that. I've always seen people, once they start giving that a go and start applying that in their life, they're like, this is game changing for me because I'm not just feeling good inside with who I'm supporting and knowing them, but it actually is a much better product. And I'm seeing the results of that truly in my life and my family's life. So for me, there's so many ways that this branches off. You know what I mean? And people are not seeing that full picture. They're just seeing what you said. They're just seeing the influencer who, at the end of the day, if I'm like, hey guys, let's break it down, this influencer may not even know. Like, I bet if you actually did a deep dive on ingredients or processing or transparency of the ingredients with this influencer, they wouldn't have a clue about any of it.
And that's one thing I try and drum into people. Just because someone has a large number by their account doesn't make them a professional in anything. It makes them like they put out good content, entertaining content or whatever. But it's like, you don't, like, I think society today, they see a big number beside someone's name and they think, oh, that means I can trust them. And It's like, you've got to think for yourself. Like, I want people to start thinking for themselves more and stop blindly trusting anyone, including me. It's like, ask me questions. Get to know my why and stuff like that. It's like, don't just blindly trust someone because they have a number by their name, because they have a title by their name, because they have any kind of name or celebrity status. It's like, you should be able to ask questions and be your own advocate and learn for yourself so that you can make informed decisions and you're not relying on someone else to make those informed decisions for you. And I think as society, we're kind of programmed to trust everybody else but ourselves and, need someone else to tell us what to do.
100%. How realistic is it? And this is something I'm always so curious. And I think it also depends. I know the answer is probably it depends. And that's my answer for a lot of things. When people ask me, I'm like, it depends. But realistically, what would you say if I said, Liz, like, and I know that you're already working on doing this and you do it with anything that you can. What's the realistic answer for if I said, hey, if all of your products were to be as locally and centrally located to you as possible, what percentage of them would you say are? And why would someone go outside of that?
What do you mean centrally located? Like
if I said, why can't you get everything within a 4-hour radius or 8-hour radius or whatever? Okay. Why I want a realistic conversation around, hey, is it truly realistic? Because the first thing that I get people talking about when I'm saying, hey, I want to support people that are in the US that are trying to make things that are also grown in the US, there is still amazing brands that are sourcing from outside of that. And they're like, well, we can't get that here. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering, I
think there's a balance to walk in that. I think that as a society, we can swing one way or the other. And I think while with industrialized agriculture and all of the things, it's brought a lot of challenges and it's really knocked out the little guys. It's actually brought a lot of things that are beneficial. And so I think we need to be conscientious. Like, if you want to do something 100% locally, you can totally do that. But I think there are benefits to using modern technology and our modern way of life to have access to things that you wouldn't have access to locally. So that being said, jojoba oil is not grown in Texas. So I would not have access to jojoba oil if I only source things within a 4-hour radius from me. And if someone wants that, then they just need to know that's totally fine. They just need to know what ingredients are local to them, and they're going to be very limited in what they can use. So like tallow is if you want to use pure tallow, you can pretty much find a beef farmer within a 4-hour radius of most places in the US. And so you can use straight tallow. I think there's a lot of benefit to adding in other ingredients that may or may not be local to my particular area. So like for me, I wouldn't get jojoba oil if I was doing only 4-hour radius from my location, and the products would look very different. I think we can still be conscientious and enjoy the modern conveniences of being able to have access to things that we otherwise wouldn't have access to if, airplanes didn't exist and we were only in our local area. But still majority support and keep our money within our local areas. I think for me, it's important to support the person, like a small business producing stuff, even if they are still sourcing stuff from, other parts of the country or other things outside of the US, like coconut. Like if you use any coconut products, that's majority sourced outside of the US. And so I think there's a way you can still conscientiously support a small business, even if 100% of their stuff is not local. And I think there are some small businesses who are mainly like 100% tallow based, who would have all of their products would be local or homegrown. So we work on trying to grow whatever we can, but we are limited in what we're able to do in this part of Texas. So like our raw milk, we sell to local families, and we use our own eggs in our products, and we use American farmed grass-fed tallow and stuff. We consciously gather together suppliers and then offer it to our local community. So we sell a lot in local shops and local businesses, and we contribute to the local community, even if 100% of our stuff is not only bought within the local community. There's still a huge way that you can contribute to your local community. And even farmers and stuff, a lot of farmers would have to outsource getting, like in certain seasons, like to feed their animals, they have to truck in hay from the other side of the country because they're not able to grow hay or grow things during the winter and stuff. So I think there's a balance where we can appreciate the modern conveniences, where we can draw in other resources when we need them. You think of people back in the prairie days, like if they had drought, they just died and stuff like that. Whereas we have access to people outside us, and that has come to a fault because then we've like outsourced everything to China, everything to other countries, and allowed our local producers to suffer because we've allowed other countries to produce things cheaper. So it can definitely, it's a balance that you have to walk, and you don't want to swing too hard one way. I mean, if you want to swing all the way local, like I think that's totally fine, and I think that's great. But you don't want to swing the other way where everything is outsourced. But I think there's a balance to walk where you can appreciate that we have modern conveniences that allow us access to things that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. We can appreciate and utilize that mindfully and still supporting local, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Well, for me, this is me personally, I'm going through a season where I'm trying to find a really healthy balance on that. I feel like I used to be the one who, before I knew better, 15 years ago, where I would just think it didn't matter where it came from. I just wanted whatever. I was the one who was being marketed to, and it's like, whatever, I'll just go the way the wind blows, wherever I'm being told to go.
Yeah.
That's the worst way in my mind. And so then when I knew better, I feel like over time I've gone to the other side of the spectrum, the one that you said, where I'm like, if I could have it my way, I want it to be completely all within my area. But then you run into things where people are like, and the reason that I did that is because I feel like your environment shapes you. We know this. We know that based on where you are, how the sun and the equator and where you are within the world, that the soil, the sun, the air, everything within that environment is shaping your health. And I feel like that was intentional on God's part. You know what I mean? Like what people need from a nutrient standpoint in Hawaii is going to look really different than what I need in Virginia in the middle of December.
And we saw that in Weston A. Price and the different cultures and how some of their diets would be very different, like the Eskimos diet compared to like the people in the Swiss, whereas the Eskimos was like 100% meat and the Swiss was like heavily on dairy.
Yep.
And there's like, but they've adapted to that.
Yes. And I feel like that's the thing. I feel like we still have this environment around us. No matter where you are, you can't get outside of, and you can't escape the fact that you have the soil, the sun, the air, what you have in your environment at any given time. And I feel like people need to start leaning a little bit more into that with their seasonal approach, with the products they buy. And I'm trying to find that balance personally with how much is too much where I start to get outside of that versus stay within it. And I'm not saying it is bad to have some things outside of it, but I feel like people need to be more in tune with their bodies, in tune with their self, to recognize when that balance is tipped a little bit. And I actually feel like it favors the local, but like you said, you could have some things outside of that, but know yourself and know your body enough where you know when it starts to tip.
Yeah.
And that's where the season that I'm in.
I think for me, 15 years I've been on my health journey, and I've tipped to extremes as well. And I think one thing that I found was extremes on anything aren't healthy. So I find like extreme, before I got into holistic health, I was extreme the other way, and that wasn't healthy. And then I think everyone who starts getting into health and your eyes are opened and you're just like, oh my goodness, I'm learning all this stuff, you can then tip to the other extreme. And while those extremes are like good things, if it's to an extreme, it can also not be the best for you if it's causing stress because I can't get this and I need this. And, it's like, I think our bodies are resilient. God designed our bodies to be resilient. He designed detox pathways, and he designed our bodies to be able to live in a world that wasn't perfect and to be able to compensate for that and to heal when they need to heal and stuff like that. And so I think there's an element where we need to enjoy that, like enjoy how God created our bodies and that he did create resilient bodies, and that if healthy living becomes such an obsession that it's a stressor, that it's not healthy living. It's an obsession, And so I think there's definitely a balance that needs to be caught of like, yes, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to take care of my body, but also I'm going to live and I'm going to enjoy life, and I'm not going to stress about things that I don't need to stress about. And I'm at the most balanced I am now that I've ever been. And we are the happiest, like we're also in some ways extreme because we're actually farming, and like we're producing all our own chicken, we're producing all our own milk, we're producing all our own eggs, all that kind of stuff. So in some ways, I guess I'm more extreme than I've ever been. But I also think I just have a balanced mindset of like, if we go out to eat for a treat, which is very rare, I'm not going to stress about, a small amount of seed oils and stuff, because I'm going to live my life in balance. And if I don't live my life in balance and I'm hypervigilant and stressed, that's going to also have a negative effect. But I'm going to live my life with mindfulness and gratefulness for the things that God created to keep my body healthy, but also that God created a body that is resilient and can handle some amount of stressors. Because I think I got to a point, part of my health journey, where it was like I was like so hypervigilant. It's like I had every night I would turn off all the breakers in the house, so that there was like no EMFs, and I would, the chemtrails, like, can we even go outside? And the mold, like everything has mold, and and it was like, it got to the point where it was like all I would see would be the problems, and it was like, if that's all you see, then that's not healthy, because those aren't going to go away. The chemtrails are outside of my control. Modern life, to an extent, like I don't have control that there's phone towers on every corner, and I don't have control that what airplanes spray above my house, and there's a lot that I don't have control over. And that's when you have to trust that God did give us resilient bodies that can handle a level of exposure, and we also have a God that we can trust and lean on, and that we don't have to worry and stress about things outside our control. We do what we can that are within our control, but if it's not within our control, stressing often does more harm than good. And that doesn't mean like you find out you live next to this toxic chemical plant, you just go, well, that's outside of my control. It's like, yeah, there's times when you actually need to do something about that, and like, I'm gonna move. But yeah, living in balance and doing what you can, enjoying the gifts. I think the more I look at natural living, is like, well, this is what God gave me. God gave us chickens to raise, and it's hard work. But there's like, farming is hard work. It is the hardest work we've ever done. Like, we work so hard, like raising our own meat and stuff. Like, it's so much easier to buy a piece of chicken from the grocery store, and it's cheaper in most ways, to buy a chicken from the grocery store. But there is so much satisfaction in the hard work that you get. Like, this is how God created us to live, to work hard and to enjoy our food. And then when you taste fresh chicken, you're like, there is no comparison between this chicken and the chicken from the grocery store. And so I think the more you appreciate how God intended us to live and the gifts God given us, and I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to be a steward of my body. I'm going to work as hard as I can to take care of it, and I'm going to release the rest and trust God. Like,
I heard something the other day. I wish I knew who said it. I would credit them, but a friend of mine, someone in my life recently, within the last 2 days, said this to me. She said something about not abusing God's grace And I was like, that's really interesting. And I feel like that, like I apply that now, and I'm going to apply it moving forward with that in the body, because he created the body, right? And I feel like there is this place where you start to, we were just talking, can go either way. And I feel like it's a good reminder to me daily, don't abuse that grace. And I mean the grace that the body gives, because when I say body, I think of what God did anyway, his design, and not abusing that, because I'm a know better, do better person, but I don't get anxiety over, some people talk about this like, oh my gosh, you can't live your life like that, it would just give you so much anxiety. I'm like, maybe for you, but it doesn't for me. You know what I mean? Because I guess my perspective around it is so different. Like, I enjoy this process of wanting to take, steward the body in a way that I'm proud of, and not take advantage of, you call it God's grace, call it whatever you want to, but I don't want to take advantage of that. And for me, it's something that I'm proud to do and happy to do, and it doesn't cause me anxiety. And I'm excited for the future, really, because I feel like you were talking about eating out, and I'm like, that is such a problem for so many people when they're the enjoyment of wanting to go out with friends and family and not worry about cooking and cleaning and all of that. They just want to go out, have fun, have good food, and there's not a lot of options. I'm seeing more and more of those pop up too. So for me, I'm like, well, Liz, if in your local community, if you knew that there was 5 restaurants that did it the way that we would do it at home.
So how about 3 restaurants? And we do visit those regularly.
Yeah, like, wouldn't you be so thrilled? I know that I would. Every time that I see, even if it's not in my own community, like a couple restaurants that we're highlighting around the US are doing things exceptionally well. I mean, they go above and beyond. Like, I'm just like, wow, like I get so excited, because I'm like, I feel like people are catching on, and they want to collectively do better. And yes, you could have people looking from the outside saying, that's a little like anally retentive, like you're just being too much. And I'm like, not really, because I go back to the thought of what I just said of like, not
I think our baseline, people have accepted a really low baseline.
Yeah. Yes.
And so that's too much. Like, it's easy to get to too much because they've accepted a really low baseline.
Yes.
And I think these restaurants, I love supporting, like when we find out a restaurant has like really good whole food options, or they're using beef tallow or something, like we love to support them, because like, just like we said, it's about education, and people are learning better and offering better, but also people have to be prepared to pay a little more for those restaurants.
Yeah.
Because you don't get, like, they are sourcing more expensive ingredients and doing things better. And with that comes a little bit higher of a cost. And so the restaurants we go to are a bit pricier than your average, I don't know, fast, like casual dining restaurant, without naming a restaurant.
Well, it's reprioritizing. You guys have just reprioritized your life, where it might be more expensive, but when you look at your budget and your expenses overall, you could compare it to someone. They're just spending their expenses very differently. And I would argue that they're probably spending it on things like the medical bills, like the insurance, like the,
Braces,
like all the things
dentist.
that cost from not doing it right to begin with, or getting into that lifestyle and practicing it. And I feel like we're going to see a shift here. And talking a second ago about how you're like, well, maybe I am a little extreme, because we homestead and we do this and this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly my point, is that like your mindset around it is like, we love it. We see the benefit. We want to do it. I could have someone and tell someone they need to do that from their lifestyle of, 9 to 5 working under fluorescent lights and doing what they do. And they'd be stressed out thinking about doing what you do. You know what I mean? But I'm like, it didn't happen for Liz overnight. This was an evolution, her journey. And I
don't think that farming is for everyone.
Yeah.
But I think eating the food from farmers is for everyone. And so if you don't want to farm, like, I get it. It's hard work. It's all hours work. But if you don't want to farm, generously support those who do, because it's hard work. And the grocery stores and big, like the big chicken Tyson, who, they don't support their farmers well. If you don't want to farm and do it yourself, generously support those who do, because it's really, really hard work. And I think that's one of the biggest things I learned in doing it ourselves, of like, this is hard. This is really hard. And once you do it yourself, you realize $15 for a whole chicken. Do you realize how long it takes to grow out a chicken, and then to butcher that chicken, and to store that chicken, and then to spend your time at a farmer's market selling that chicken? It's like, there is a lot of time that goes into that. And so I now don't flinch at, whenever our cow was dry, spending $15 a gallon on milk, I didn't flinch, because I know what goes into that. It is hard work. And raw milk can be like a point of contention for people, because it seems so outrageously expensive as compared to what you can get at the store. But I'm like, the nutrition, there's no comparison in the nutrition. and the work. There's like, ultimately, like my dream has always been to run like a little niche raw dairy because I just love it so much. But I'm like, it is never, ever something you do to make money because there's not a lot of money in it. And I think people need to realize that they're not selling their milk at $15 a gallon and driving a Mercedes bankrolling. It's like they are like making a very meager wage, if that. Like we have a local farm who they do, like they're my favorite dairy. I've done raw dairy. I've bought raw dairy for the past 15 years. They're my favorite. They have 100 acres and only like 20 cows. So the acre to cow ratio is amazing. They're grass fed. They just do everything so well. And I found out they started this raw dairy and they sell out. Like they sell out. They milks and stock gets sold. Milks and stock gets sold because it's just the best milk. And after operating for 2 years, they had barely breaking even. They hadn't made a profit yet. And you're like, and people would think, oh, that's too expensive. You're like, it's too expensive for someone to do agriculture really, really well, take care of their cows really, really well, work really, really hard and not even break even. It's like, there's just such a disconnect in our food system. And it's like, there's a reason why conventional farmers, like suicide rate is at an all-time highs because they're not getting paid. They're working their butts off and it's like a slave wage. They're really not getting paid what they're worth. And most farmers are massively in debt and getting government subsidies. And another thing people don't realize with the cheap food in the grocery store is like with eggs and things like that, it's like it's so cheap because the government pays for it. The government subsidies, like our taxes are paying for a bit of it. And so it's like, that's not like, I'm sorry, like not now because eggs have gotten expensive now, but I remember a few years ago, I could get a dozen eggs of like the cheapest cheap brand, a dozen eggs for like $1.08. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't like, no one can produce eggs and make a profit for $1.08. The grocery store is selling that. So I don't know what the farmer is. Maybe the farmer's selling them for 50 cents a dozen. And that includes, oh, my battery's about to die. Let me go.
Grab one.
Let me go plug in.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's such a good point. I was thinking we have ourselves in quite a little like pickle here with society because things have shifted. Back in the day, everyone in community, if you weren't farming, you were contributing some other way. You were, helping with the homeschooling, or you were helping with something else in the community. And now we have people that are so disconnected from community that's what's put us in this place where these people who now want to contribute to their community, they're doing it alone or they're doing it with very few other people. So I feel like that's another problem in and of itself, is this idea that people are wanting to get the really good quality stuff, but they're not wanting to pay the premium prices with their farmers and their local community, not recognizing that, hey, they're one of the few that are doing this.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, I feel like there's a lot that people need to think through when they're trying to think about how they want to live their life now, how they want to support their local farmers and give them credit where credit is due, because, they're off living their life on in their computers and, their work, but they're not contributing to their local community. I just feel like we're at this place where some reflection needs to be done on that end.
For sure.
When someone does say it's just so expensive. But they also want to be healthier. It's like this weird like dichotomy.
And they also want everyone to be paid a fair wage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah. So anyways, well, Liz, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and telling us how Urban Farm Collection came to be. I obviously, because of wanting you to be a part of the WellHaus ecosystem, think so highly of everything that you do. And I'm glad that other people now get to see that and experience that.
Cool. I'm super excited to be part of it and can't wait to see where this goes. And yeah, your marketplace and the box and everything. I'm super excited. I think this is a really cool opportunity for people to get their hands on some really good quality products that they otherwise wouldn't have known about, and to really support small producers and stuff. So I think it's really fun.
Thanks. Tell me a little bit where people can find you.
Where people can find me?
Yeah. If people like social media, give me all the places people.
So my personal Instagram is urban_farmwife. And on that Instagram, I just basically chronicle our homesteading journey. I talk about holistic health and it's just our personal life. I try not to make that account really salesy and stuff. It's just like me giving back and showing what it like the ins and outs of what it looks like to have a milk cow and what it looks like to take care of farm animals and chickens and produce your own food. And I'll talk about, different topics in the headlines as far as health and things going on. So that's my personal account. And then our business Instagram is Urban Farm Collection. And that's where I'll really highlight products we sell, and you'll get like a behind the scenes of us creating products and talking about products and their benefits. And that's really where I put a lot of the content of our skincare collection. And then we're also branching into cosmetics because, like we talked about with the skincare, I've seen a need in like actual quality cosmetics, because I think women and teens and stuff, that we love to be beautiful and put on makeup and stuff like that, but it's also wrecking our skin and our hormones and stuff. And so we are actively working on a whole brand of clean cosmetics that are beautiful and safe, so you can feel excited to use them just like you would shopping in Sephora, getting your beautiful makeup, but also they're safe, clean ingredients that you can feel confident for you, yourself, and your teen daughters using. So we're really excited about that coming on. And so Urban Farm Collection is where you'll kind of get to see that cosmetic line develop and get to see more of the behind the scenes of our skincare. And then, that's where you'll find us.
Good. Love it. Well, thank you again for today. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like so many people are going to get a lot of valuable nuggets out of it. So thank you for everything.
Perfect. You are so welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.